Welcome to your Rally Point podcast. Organizations need a reason to exist, and people need a reason to care, but none of it matters if you can't connect the two. This podcast is where nonprofits, advocacy groups, and mission-driven organizations discover their rallying point. It is your go-to resource for mobilizing support, building authentic connections, and driving real results. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's rally together to create the impact you're meant to make. This is your Rally Point podcast, brought to you by rallycorp.com.
Hey there, James, your host of Your Rally Point podcast, here today with Jack Bobin. Jack, this is our first episode ever in the history of Your Rally Point podcast. This is like epic, dude. So people that are listening today are going to be like, holy crap, I caught the first one for reals. Like,
yeah,
shouldn't we send them like a prize or something?
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been wanting to do podcasts and what we do for a long time, and it's been a goal of mine. So I'm really excited to finally do it, man.
I absolutely love it. So we introed this on the beginning of the podcast with our amazing narrator, who is also named James. Sounds a lot like me.
Yeah.
But basically, we talk about what Rally Point means, and from a military context, and most people think of it, in the military terms. It's when people come together. The troops rally back together, kind of an agreed upon location and time and space, if you would, where the troops kind of come back together. Sometimes after suffering a defeat, right? But often for a cause or a purpose. So the way we use it, Jack, just to make sure we keep our conversation on point, because it is the rally point, is just to think about organizations need a reason to exist and people need a reason to care. But it's all for naught, in my humble opinion, if no one knows about it or no one can connect with it, right? So it's one of those things, Jack, I think you can have the greatest organization in the world with the most intentional purpose that's clearly defined, and a whole bunch of people out there that would support you. But if they don't connect with one another, it doesn't really work, does it?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk specifically in this organization or this podcast about organizational messaging, list segmentation, technologies to connect with people in the moment, to inspire and activate people to actually rally around a cause. And we're going to call that the rally point, because I think it's more than just the medium or the tool. It's going to be the strategy, the messaging, the segmentation, all the things. So what do you think about that, Jack?
Well, it's when I came to Rally a year ago, the point really stuck with me about, you can envision rallying, right? There's a lot of, and not just text companies, but there's a lot of companies out there that have these crazy names that you're like, what does that mean? It's like some weird combination of misspellings. Yeah. But rally really is the definition of centering around or gelling of an idea and a force to move forward, right? And I think that's really the DNA of who we are. And at first I was like, rally, why the name? But then as I've worked here and I've worked with our customers and partners, it really is true. And
I love it.
I think that name fits perfect.
Well, it's one of our, it's not a secret because there's a blog post on it. It's a little dated at this point because we wrote it back when we first launched. But basically, I'm on record, and I'll say it multiple times in this podcast because I want people to understand we are not a text messaging company looking for a market.
Right.
Like we gathered our own team after exiting another company, brought them together to solve the one problem of moving people to act. So it's so funny now looking back on it, Jack, but we use the word mobilize. I'm like, going to mobilize, we're going to rally. 18 months before we landed on text messaging. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, yeah. So, the text messaging just becomes the medium.
Exactly.
It's just the medium that everybody uses.
In fact, in full disclosure, when the team actually came to me and said, "Hey, texting is a winner," because we had a couple of little pilots we were running. I said, "Look, we're going to take $500,000. We're going to invest it in some nonprofit, campaigns, and we're going to see, like, for example, we did a little pilot where we said, I wonder how many strangers we can get to show up at Pacific Beach here in San Diego and clean the beach. We'll give away, Disney tickets or what, we'll find out ways to incentivize people, but we're going to see, how many people we can get to show up at a beach." We did an event with firefighters where we wanted to see how many firefighters we could get to test this product that this company had hired us to see if we could get people to rally around a brand. So we looked at geofencing, we looked at social media, we looked at ad buy, we looked at mailers in neighborhoods, we looked at all types of crazy things, geo-targeting, email campaigns, all this stuff. And when the team finally came back and said the only thing that really worked is not requiring people to download an app, unlock permissions on their phone, create an account, like we have to meet them where they are to activate them. The answer is text messaging. I distinctly remember that meeting, and it was actually a series of meetings, and I kept saying, no, guys, go back to the drawing board. There's got to be a better way. There's so many texting tools out there. Like, why the heck would we build another one? Like, the last thing this world needs is another text messaging company. We need that like we need it, like seriously, I was like, nope, ain't going to do that. But then we started looking at these other tools and realizing that most of them were pretty crap, and they had a lot of, really bad practices. And I thought, you know what? If we're going to do this, we're going to leverage AI, and we're going to do it human-centered, and we're going to just level up because, Jack, 1994 called, and they want their text messaging back, right? Like, there's got to be a better way.
I know, and we keep thinking about that. We all of us in the tech industry, not text industry, but in the tech industry, especially in nonprofits and enterprise and. It's how do we reach people where they are? It's always 100%. The conversation, right?
Yep.
And of course, there's Twitter and these other things, right? But we talk about text, and I've been talking about this for probably 10 years. Text being messaging for the moment.
Yeah.
And the fact actually is that during this podcast, people watching us will be getting text messages.
Yep.
But they won't be getting a Twitter message, and they won't be looking at their 100%. Instagram. But when their son or daughter or friend says, "What's up?" or "Where are we going for dinner?" you're going to stop this podcast and answer that text. And that is why we use that form of communication too.
Yeah.
So it's really no question. And I'll say that, when I worked for AT&T back in the day, we were looking at different messaging applications, right? And text comes on your phone at the very bottom as a default. Yeah. And that space on your phone, that text space.
That's real estate.
It is real estate, and it's valuable to all of us. It's valuable to me as a user, but it's also valuable here at Rally because that's how we reach people in a meaningful, personal way.
Yeah.
All the other stuff, we talk about email as messaging for the week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you might open your email 10% of the time. And we talk about social media being messaging for the day. If you get a chance to log in.
With a short shelf life. Yep.
Yeah. But text messaging is messaging for the moment. We see this happening all the time. It's why you get a text message when there's an Amber Alert, for example, or out here where we live, there's an earthquake or something, right?
Yeah.
It's because it works.
Or if there's a fraud alert on your Citibank credit card, sure. like if somebody wants to get through to you, hey, Uber is arriving, they're going to do it through text messaging. So. Right. With great power comes great responsibility, right? Thank you, Peter Parker's stepdad there, or uncle, right? So, so the bottom line is like, how do we do that well? How do we educate people to see mobile not as just a medium or a method or a tactic, but actually a strategy? So a mobile first world. I mean, and here's the bottom line, Jack. And I'd love to know. So we'll in a second here, I want to unwind a bit and talk a bit about your background and who you are, so that we can set that up because I think people want to hear your story, and it's why you're here at Rally, and I love to connect on that. But one of the things that just blows my mind about mobile, when people resist text messaging, is that I'm like, look, we're not talking about text message. Yes, okay. At the end of the day, one of the options at Rally, for example, is to send a text message, for sure, right? Clearly. But it's not just text messaging. Chances are people are opening your emails, scanning your website, engaging with Instagram. They're doing that on their phone. People are not carrying around a laptop and, into the bathroom, Right. I've got a lot of things going for me, but one of them that I'm most proud of, Jack, is that I do not sit on the toilet with a laptop.
Right.
Okay. So I'm very glad I have that discipline. I would consider that really cool.
That's over the edge, right?
That's right. That would be problematic. That would be, that's one of the many reasons why you should shut the door in the bathroom. Just do not sit there with a laptop. That would be a problem. But I got my phone with me. Right. Mm-hmm. So we're in a mobile first world, whether we like it or not. I don't go to I don't wake up first thing in the morning and go find my laptop, but I do find my phone. And we're going to talk a bit about some disciplines, some things, because I want to be part of this. I don't think that's a good use of your first hour, but it often is. Right.
Right.
So the question is okay, if people are going to be that addicted to their phone. How do we redeem it in a sense? How do we use it well? And how do we leverage it? Because it's already happening. They're on their phone reading your emails. So you can argue for newsletter emails, and that's great. By all means, let's do that. But just know that they're probably reading that newsletter on their phone. So when we talk mobile first, we're talking all content consumers consume on their phone at any given time. Text messaging, voicemails, phone calls, videos, Instagram, Facebook, emails, your website, right? So we're simply just saying, okay, if they're on their phone, how do we use that moment and activate them? And then what channels are we going to use to reach them again in a human-centered way? So anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox because we don't have like hours in here. Is that all right?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move into a little bit about who Jack Bobin is, what Jack does, and why Jack does it. So, Jack, why don't you give us the backstory of your hero journey here?
Yeah. So back in 2009, I was in an industry that took a big hit. You know, if you were around back then, you know that 2008, 2009 was not a real good time for our economy. And so a buddy of mine, I was in manufacturing and all of that and supply chain management. And he said, you have to be in sales. And so I took a chance and I had one guy who really sponsored me to go to AT&T, and AT&T Wireless, is one of the four leading telecommunications companies. And I started my journey there with texting.
Nice.
We worked with large clients to reach mainly their employee bases first. It was really never about buy a car. We were working with General Motors and Tesla when Tesla first started, and we were doing OnStar notifications via text and these kinds of things. And so it was more just like utilitarian stuff. Mm-hmm. And then we realized how important it was for consumers and emergencies and some of these other things. And so AT&T, I was part of a small team that branched out into these other areas, and it was a formative time for text messaging as we know it today.
Yeah, 2009 was not that long ago, but it was in tech years, right?
Yeah, it really seems like forever ago. I mean, it's 15 years ago, but we were working together, and so many people just aren't aware of this. But when we worked together with the other, there's 4 telecommunications carriers. And we would meet in Washington, D.C. and talk with a bunch of lawyers around. And I mean, all 4 of us, or all the people in the room, were responsible for reaching every American on every device through text.
Amazing. Say that again. Every American on every device.
Yeah. The people in that room were in control of all the text messaging in the United States. And at that point, I realized why we had lawyers in the room, right? I mean, it dawned on me, right, that we here in this room were establishing the rules and the things that are in place today to make sure messaging was great. Yeah, it was a really great time to be in texting, or I mean, just kind of be part of all that. And then AT&T, I wanted to go do something a little bit different. And so I went to a small company based out of Seattle. And that company grew and grew. And I grew more into the political channels for text messaging and helped form some of the things that we see today, and good or bad in the political side.
Mostly bad, but okay. But we'll give you a pass on that one.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in future episodes about our approach to what we see as a better day for political messaging.
Yeah,
right?
please.
But I helped grow that company to a good size, and then of course I wanted to go do something different again. Yeah. And I like these kind of forming something new in kind of an entrepreneurial way. And so I joined you, James. And
that's good.
And here we are here at Rally. And we have, I don't know, over 250 nonprofit clients. And we're making new explorations and adventures into different spaces now. And so
and even back into some political, but this time reverse engineering what we've done for nonprofits, and that is human centered.
Yeah. Oh, and it's going to be
value led.
Yeah, and even today we see the results of some of this political messaging in the last cycle. This being December, just about a month ago, And we just see so much opportunity in that. So that's an exciting new era, era in a direction that we're also going to add to what we do. And
I love it.
Again, we'll talk more about that down the line. But
So 2009, you said. 2007 is when the iPhone, June 2007 is when the iPhone hit the market. So the iPhone was a baby, right?
yes.
Text messaging came out in what year, Jack? I think it's early 90s, 90.
Or, I think it was 95, something like that.
94, 95, something like that. Back
I mean,
when
we were pushing
just.
we were pushing the three letters on each.
That's right. So
Like
I'm not
A, B,
gonna
C.
I'm not gonna say the number on the air here because it is actually I use it for my my garage entry code, for example. So if you find my house, you'll get in. Sure. But there's a number that my wife and I to this day will text each other. That's just a little like a hug or something, like a digital hug. But it's literally the numbers that make up those letters because that's what we used to send. I don't know if you can see over my shoulder here, but I've got a bunch of old pagers. And I have one of the original alphanumeric pagers back before text messaging became a little bit more mainstream, but the paging services.
Yeah.
So I was issued, my work issued me a pager. So I had this little pager, but my wife would text me that little digital hug.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
it's so funny. But yeah, I remember those days of hitting the
911.
keyboard 3 times to say a C.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
All right, so we've come a long ways in text messaging, but it's amazing, Jack, in my humble opinion, and it's just my opinion. I don't think we've really as far as sending SMS, just raw SMS. It's really the same. It hasn't really changed.
It hasn't. Right? It hasn't really changed. Now I challenge everybody watching this to think about a technology that hasn't really changed all that much in 25 years.
It's crazy.
Pick one.
Yeah.
But I will say that's part of the staying power.
Yep.
Because think about how many messaging apps have come and gone.
Yep.
Or other things.
Social networks.
Like MySpace.
Yeah.
Maybe back in the day, right?
Yep.
All these things just come and go, and you kind of get this idea like, oh, I don't even want to download that app because it's just a fad.
Yep.
But the staying power of texting is that it's consistent.
Yep.
So it works to balance itself out, I think. But yeah, it just is what it is. It's bytes and bits of letters and links, and
it's crazy.
Once in a while,
it's absolutely nuts. Yeah. Now we've seen some enhancements around. Of course, Apple came along with their iMessage, which we all got the Send in Blue, which is amazing. We can talk about that, and how Rally's kind of leading into that. What we're doing with Send Blue. But there's the blue text versus green text. You always can tell the Android person, Jack,
me
on the friend chat because they're the green ones out right now. There's RCS that's coming. We'll talk about that. That's now on several of the phones.
Sure.
So we're going to talk about what RCS and how that's changing. So we'll get a little bit more technical on that. Obviously, emojis have taken on better form and better light, right? Images and websites kind of wrap. But most of that technology itself is a function of the smartphones interpreting, but the actual base SMS sending and receiving has largely gone unchanged, which is just fascinating. But to your point, that's the staying power, which is a beautiful thing. We're going to lean into that. So we'll talk some of these podcasts about the technical things like SMS versus RCS. We're going to break down some of these acronyms. We're going to demystify text messaging because I think, Jack, and you and I talk a lot about this, so I know you agree. I just want to get your opinion in this episode here. But it's amazing how organizations today sell text messaging. Like, for example, they're very predatory on pricing. They hide the true cost of things. There's a wide range of things out there that if you're not aware what to look for, you can really get bit in the bottom there, right? So we're going to talk about those things and educate our customers and our listeners because we want people to know that the way the world works. Because the more information they have, the more knowledge they have, the more power they have, and the more equipped they can be to make better decisions, particularly around the use of different technologies like text messaging, right? So what are some of the trends you've seen? We talked about the technology not changing much in 25 years, but in the last 25 years, what have been some big sweeping changes that you have seen with text messaging?
I think that it used to be, I think maybe in the late 90s and into maybe 2010, it used to be that text messaging was one-to-one, and it was your friends and you, and it was kind of this instead of passing a note in class, you texted, right? And maybe I'll remember passing a note, right, or whatever that might be, or making a phone call, right? you texted one-to-one, and we call that person-to-person. And I think around 2005, 2007, software started becoming available to where you could sit at a laptop, type up a text message, and send it to hundreds or thousands of people
Yep.
at one shot, at one push of the button. And I think that was a huge change. So I think that the advent of this kind of what we call application that would send thousands of messages, it was a little dicey in the beginning because there was no real rules around it, software-led regulation. And that was a big change. You started getting bank notifications, you started getting doctor notifications, and texting started enhancing our lives because we got a reminder that there was soccer practice tonight, right? And I think that was a big sea change to where we really started using text as our all-in-one form of communication. And I think right around 2012, texting became the most widely used form of communication globally every day.
Yep.
It started, there was a point in time where no one used phone calling. Everybody started texting more than they called.
Yeah.
And I think the advent of this kind of application that allowed you to send messaging to banking customers and patients and all these other things really drove, that's where the innovation started taking place. Where there's innovation, though, people would kind of jump in, and we started seeing
Spam.
tons and tons of text messaging take place that probably shouldn't have. And so we started seeing nefarious characters, and the industry calls them bad actors.
Yeah.
And so as texting has grown and the industry has grown, it's kind of been advancement, like we see RCS coming, advancement, and then a little bit of regulatory or a little, put some guardrails up for that. Political texting is the same way, right? People get a little bit annoyed by the political texting. So so I foresee some of this, cranking down a little bit on that.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's been. But I think, to answer your question, when text messaging enhanced our lives beyond person-to-person communication was really when text messaging became very valuable tool. I mean, it's our contact list, right? You don't even, you call people from your text. For example, you call people from your text message inbox. I mean, you just look them up and you hit the call, right? It's really become our tool.
Yeah, 100%. And if you think about it, Jack, back in the day, to send a text message, you had to have the contact in your phone, or at least know their phone number, right? You would enter the phone number, then you would enter the message, and you would hit send, right? And even in the early days, it was like, 3 times you get to C, 4 times you get to whatever, right? Or twice you get to whatever to spell out the words, and then came the keyboard, and iPhone really revolutionized that. And iPhone clearly wasn't the first. Before that I had a what was that Microsoft phone? Anyway, I had keyboard phones before that. Palm Pilot, I think, even was my first. But anyway, so text messaging has evolved with the ability for people to do more, but then companies could do more because of some of these technologies that form the ability to create software that interface with these carrier networks. Which we'll define some of these terms in another episode, and we don't need to get that much detail now, but we'll break down kind of how some of this stuff works, because I think people need to. The more they understand that, as I said, the more power they have. But but I remember to this day, Jack, and mid to end of 2008, 9 time frame, I remember my CTO at the company coming in, beaming with excitement, because he had found out that there was a company that was just launching that would make. That would basically shorten the amount of time that it would take us to develop our own. At the time we had a little SMS, little text messaging app that would reset passwords and that kind of thing, and communicate through the company at the time, website development company we were working, CMS. And shout out to my CTO Etienne, because he was so excited about this technology, and he needed a couple $100 to sign up and get going, and it was just off to the races. So I saw how our company in San Diego, with just a handful of developers, could quickly and rapidly deploy text messaging inside of our app. That was a foreshadowing of things to come, because it has just accelerated rapidly.
And now you get text messages from your refrigerator.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you got a leak at home or something like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have a leak detector in my RV that notifies me when I'm home through Bluetooth. But if I don't respond after so many hours, it starts texting me. So
exactly.
yeah, and it's just a little device that sits under the fridge because the last thing I want is a water leak unnoticed in my RV for sure. All right.
So, and that proves the point. While
Yeah.
texting, the technology of how a message gets
Yeah.
through a network into your phone and what it looks like on your phone really hasn't changed all that much. But the use cases of it have I wouldn't say 10x'd, but I mean, from everything from power outage notifications for power companies,
Yep.
little indicators on power lines,
Yeah.
to your refrigerator, to your getting notified that their soccer practice has changed,
100%.
through a kid's sports app or a kid's notification like that.
Well, we're going to talk about the various types of text messaging. We're going to talk about A2P automated text messaging. We're going to talk about peer-to-peer text messaging because that's still something we can do, and why and when you should do that. We'll talk about all the different forms of MMS, which is sending media like videos, when and how to use emojis and all that. But Jack, just back to my earlier point, texting is one channel on the phone.
Right.
We have voicemails, very important. We have video, extremely important, right? We have email. So in this podcast, we'll go into various forms of communication through the mobile phone. Of course, SMS is really where we got our start at Rally. Because, frankly, when we listed out all the different channels available to us on the device called mobile to mobilize people, pun intended, we realized that the only one that did not require an account or a login or a download was, in fact, SMS. And it was, like you said earlier, the real estate app. One of the first things I did when I got my iPhone is delete the mail app. I mean, I couldn't delete the mail app, but I didn't set it up because I did not want email on my phone. I don't even hardly want it on my desktop, right?
Right.
And actually now have someone, thank God, can check that for me because I'm in my inbox maybe twice a week. But text messaging, like it or not, it's there because I want to know when there's a fraud alert or when there's a water leak or something like that. So texting is here to stay. We're going to talk a lot about the different channels, voicemail, texting, email, of course, when and how to use that. But we will also spend a great deal of time talking about messaging, list segmentation, how to build a list, make sure that people want to hear from you, do it in a human-centered way. There's a reason why we trademarked that term, and we're going to talk a lot about it. So
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Me too. Well, we're right at time, so let's do any closing thoughts here, and we will figure this out. So if you're listening to this episode, as we said before, this is our first one. We're going to get better from here, so I hope you've enjoyed the time. It's only going to get better as we figure out what the heck we're doing, Jack, I hope. What do you think?
Yeah, and for me, the closing thought about why we wanted to do a podcast, or why I've wanted to do a podcast, is this industry is one of the, and we hear from our clients all the time. I know how to send emails. I have an email client, or we know how to run our website. But for 25 years, shame on us for not opening these, the big gates to let people in to understand how all this works too. And I think that's been missing. And I've always wanted to let people know how all this works and help others get an understanding about how to use texting in the right way.
I love it. Well, as we started 2000s and talk a lot of 2008, 9, 10 or so, what you will find if you do your research is that there were companies that popped up that began to democratize text messaging to make it easier for people to use. And by people, I mean developers, software companies. You started seeing it pop up in CRMs, password reset, and those kinds of things. So I'm grateful they did. We participated in that. We built our company in part on that platform. I was able to participate in their IPO. So I'm quite happy to be part of some of these companies. Now, what we're going to do, Jack, it's a big vision, but what we're going to do is we're going to create that human-centered approach. We're going to humanize text messaging. When the books are written 10, 20 years from now about our little company, I want to say that, man, this little company called RallyCore launched, and it humanized the technology. So they democratized it, made it accessible to developers, and it went like wild gangbusters. And now we're all getting these text messages from these systems, some of which automated and somewhat spammy. We're gonna reverse that trend on some level and reintroduce human to it, and think about how we can now humanize it, because I think that's going to be where our values are going to lead us.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I look forward to sharing all this in the future episodes.
I do. All right. Well, that's a wrap for today. Thanks again, everybody, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Jack.
You bet.